This story comes from the chairman of Robert Space Industries. If you're not familiar, these are the guys making Star Citizen, raised over $500 million to produce this game, new game engines, rendering pipelines, tech, all sorts of stuff. Star Citizen has sort of a public identity issue, and that is that it comes off as being sort of a really strange possible money laundering scheme. That's at least what outsiders really think. That's what it looked like to me for a long time until I tried the game myself. I can say the game is pretty impressive. There's a lot here, and it's pretty cool. And one of the things that we're going to look at here is some new tech that they put in that actually is very, very impressive. But again, once again, the issue is that the public perception is a little rough. However, it looks like they're making leeway. Probably, and they say it's thanks to a lot of influencers helping introduce their audiences to the game for the first time, to actually give the game a shot. And people are trying it and actually liking it. So I think things are changing. But Star Citizen just keeps, adding new and new stuff. There are some problems, which we're going to outline in just a second, specifically that they offer these really cool tech advances and cool new tricks and features and things, but they're always behind schedule, and they almost always launch totally broken, and they never really get fully fixed. So what am I referring to? Well, we'll go through it briefly. The first thing that has to be referenced is the persistent entity streaming. This might sound a little overly wordy, so let me explain. Basically, in any online game, you say like a typical MMO, like say Elder Scrolls Online or World of Warcraft or whatever. If you go to an area of the map, there's players there. They can drop weapons, they can drop items, right? But the general idea or like agreed upon phenomenon is that if you drop something, it's probably going to despawn very quickly, if not immediately. And certainly it'll despawn once you log out of your session. Certainly. That's something that's just not going to be a thing in Star Citizen. Things will never despawn. And what they do, or what this is known as, is persistent entity streaming. So what that means is that anywhere in the Star Citizen universe, you can drop items, you can leave cargo, you can crash your ship, you can do whatever, and it will stay there permanently forever until someone moves it. And what this allows for in terms of gameplay is like you go to a planet. Again, these are like planet-sized planets. You can go find a cave that generated somewhere at random coordinates, and you can start stashing all sorts of loot there. If you don't want to store it on your ship or anywhere else, you stash it there. And you can leave the game and come back a year later and it will still be there. And that's a little insane, because the way that they have to do this, my understanding is that they have like a series of servers, and then the servers are all split into shards. And so you're playing on one shard of the server tree or root system. And then they have to be able to communicate which servers you previously played on so that your stuff is always persistent and your squad stuff and friend stuff is always there. It's really interesting. And it's also cool because like other things, if you crashed your ship on the planet at one point, your ship wreck will still be there 6 months later on that planet until you go and salvage it and, tear it down for scrap metal and stuff, which is a little wild. As far as I'm aware, this has never been done before. It is truly a cutting edge technological advancement and actually pretty impressive. Right now, this is something that's only available in the 3.18 build of the game. And it's only available, like that version of the game is only available to certain testers in certain servers. So it's not public yet. And part of the reason it's not public is because, of course, it launched pretty broken and it's pretty glitchy. It's also caused all sorts of tanking performance issues. However, I mean, it's pretty freaking cool that you're able to do this. And you see this guy right now, he's salvaging a ship and all sorts of stuff. Herobrine, our resident mod for Star Citizen stuff, says there will be a system to clean up a lot of items in one location based on age and priority due to your own PC. Most likely not being able to handle a million medical gowns in one place. Yes. Yeah. No, obviously, the potential for spamming is certainly there. No doubt there will be a lot of people that go into areas and just dump piles of garbage. That's a concern. That's something that they are aware of. And they're trying to come up with ways that you could either quickly clean that type of thing up, or that you could, maybe disincentivize that with in-game fines, if you're caught doing that by authorities and stuff like that. But the basic thesis, the premise of this whole system is that it's a universe that you're playing within, and they want that universe to feel as realistic as possible. And that includes, if you were to drop this gun, this weapon right here on the ground, you fly away from the planet. Unless somebody picks it up and moves it, it's going to be there when you come back. Whether that's tomorrow or a year from now. Which is pretty cool. So that's one of those ridiculous gameplay features that they're actually trying to implement. It's a little easier said than done. Obviously, this type of thing is not easily implemented, but they are actively doing it. And from the early tests, it looks like it does work. There are a couple of hiccups here and there. So, for example, I saw one guy, he was describing it where if you are playing on a shard, a server shard, and say your ship crashes like this one did, and all of the cargo and your stuffed animals and everything scatter all over this planet's surface. If that happened on this server shard. And later, if you load into a different server shard, this stuff won't be here because it's located on that other shard. So what they're going to do is they're going to allow you to specifically load into dedicated server sections where you've previously played so that your stuff is reflected. In the future, they will have seamless server meshing. They plan to have this, I think they said at the end of this year, they plan to have this implemented, where basically if you load into the game, you never have to think about it. The server just handles getting you to the right shard automatically. They plan to have that implemented, similar to what Sea of Thieves does. If you've ever played Sea of Thieves, if you're sailing on the seas, you will seamlessly be going between servers as you're sailing across the sea. And so one player may appear to you over here, but after they sail off into the distance, you load into another server without ever noticing it and meet up with another player who's playing on a different server. So you never see it. It's seamless. That's what they hope to do here, where as you travel from planet to planet, you could be bouncing between different server shards, but you don't notice it. All you know is that every time you go somewhere, all of your stuff is still there, which is pretty cool. You can get stuffed animals. You can get a lot of stuffed animals. Yes. Yes, you can. My frustration, Herobrine, correct me if I'm wrong. Every time I play that game, I play for a while and then I get thirsty and then I end up in the hospital due to lack of water and thirst. Am I crazy, or should I be able to buy or grab water in my 890 jump? Surely there's water in that ship somewhere. I just can't find it. Thank you, Steven, for becoming a member. Appreciate you. Surely in that ship somewhere that cost millions and millions of credits, there's a bottle of water. Or at the very least, if I go to my room, I should be able to get water out of that. But apparently, no, you can't drink out of the sink or something. Boggles my mind. Am I just dumb? Am I not seeing it? It drives me crazy. Anyway, YouTube just notified me about your High on Life video saying it was uploaded 4 minutes ago, but you uploaded at 10 a.m. your time an hour ago. Yeah. I really don't understand the internet or computers. Yeah, I don't know what YouTube's doing. They said something about with that server meshing that they plan on doing, pretty much everybody will be able to see everything. So instead of a server having, say, 100 players, a server will technically be able to host tens of thousands. That's what they eventually hope to do. Right now, my understanding is the server shards can host 100 people at a time. and that's it. But eventually the server shards will all blend together, and so those shards will be part of like nodes, server nodes, and each node can host tens of thousands, while the broader server infrastructure can host millions of players, right? So it's very, very complicated, and they're trying to figure it out. But what's cool is that it actually seems to be working, which is even crazier. Let's see. So persistent entity streaming is the headline feature of Star Citizen Alpha 3.18. And while we didn't manage to release to live, so to everybody, before the end of 2022, it is currently in wave 1 of public test universe, the test bed wherein we harden patches with the community's help before we deem the patch stable enough for the live releases. And there are already lots of community videos and posts about the emergent gameplay that is enabled by the persistent entity streaming, especially when combined with other 3.18 features such as salvage and soft death, where the ship doesn't blow up into pieces but instead becomes disabled, allowing players to survive a once fatal event and attackers to board and potentially loot the disabled ship. So then he goes on. They've also added interesting things such as dynamic events with big citywide battles and things. 100 players, 100 different players entering the atmosphere at once. And this might look like a staged event. We had that, if you guys weren't here, we did that stream where we were playing this, and we did a funeral for one of the guys. I think Herobrine was one of the bodies. But we did a funeral for some of the people we were playing with who were killed by another person who thought it was really funny to just kill people randomly. So we loaded them up into the ship, flew into the atmosphere of the planet, and then let them out of the back of the ship to send them off. And we lit flares, and it was like a whole thing. It was great. And so this type of thing happens all the time. This type of thing happens all the time. It's actually quite fun. It is a sandbox. They have mining stuff. They have combat missions, and you can play as a medic and go save people. There's all that stuff you can do. But some of the most fun that you'll have is just dicking around with your friends. Kind of like Sea of Thieves, where it's just, I could go on and do missions and quests and things. But honestly, I have the most fun just getting with my friends and then getting super drunk and trying to jump off of the top mast onto the deck below. That's where the most fun comes from. A god tier funeral. You're damn right. It was the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 2, but in Star Citizen, it was beautiful. It really was. It really was. It was great. This is what's particularly interesting to me. Another record-breaking year of growth. While our most passionate players test 3.18 in the PTU, and our developers take a well-deserved break, I wanted to share with you some truly momentous stats from this year that illustrate that Star Citizen had its best year yet and crossed some historical milestones that demonstrate this game we all love is finally breaking into the larger gaming consciousness with success that is greater and faster than we anticipated. This year, 2022, over 1 million unique players logged into Star Citizen and played our game, and they did so for more than 46 million hours. Our daily active users this year, in other words, unique players logging in each day, has grown 50% over the last year and is double what it was at the end of 2019. This year, we are also averaging over 240,000 monthly active users, which is 33% higher than our average monthly active users from last year, with highs of over 400,000 during May with this year's Invictus launch week. There's a lot of people that are playing this game and trying it out. A lot. Those of you who follow our funding tracker doubtless know that we already eclipsed all last year's revenues by mid-November, and we will have our first $100 million plus year ever, and by a fair margin. You can also read a more in-depth report of our 2021 financials here, but as great as 2021 was, which was remarkable for growth beyond the COVID-bolstered revenues of 2020, we managed to grow 30% beyond 2021. Where does all of this revenue go? Into development, as we've hired more than ever before to continue building out Squadron 42 and our persistent universe teams. It's no secret that our two games and technology are among the most complex and complicated endeavors in the gaming and even tech industry. We're doing things with our engine that are truly groundbreaking, and it takes talent and time to achieve the ambitious goal we've set for ourselves. And so even as we grow, we invest all that growth back into our teams through hiring and retaining critical talent, which is good. Here are some charts reflecting that. New accounts per year. These are new accounts. So one of the perceptions people have had about Star Citizen is that it's like maybe 5,000 or 10,000 whales that have a ton of money, like 40-year-old guys that this is the one game they play and they spend a lot of money on it. But that's not actually the case. There are tons of new players. Like those diehard guys, if you spend $600 real world money on a ship in this game, you're not making a new account. You're using that old account you made back here. And you're not changing it because that's the account that has the really nice ship on it that you paid real money for. So with this, like, I don't know. It's just, it's crazy to see how many new accounts are coming into the fold. There's a ton of new people trying it. Yeah, new ships. The alpha. Yeah, 3.18 is getting close. The road to alpha 4.0. The game is certainly very, very far away from being anywhere close to done. But I don't think this game will ever be done in the classical way that we talk about in video game development. I think it's always going to be getting new stuff piled into it. But it's really cool to see that it's continuing to grow and expand, and it's pretty crazy. The recent video from Bed Bananas really hyped the game up for people. I've met several players and streamers who joined the game just because of his movie-like video. Oh, well, that's good. That's awesome. I think that that's the key. I think if they really want it to continue blowing up, they need to double down on these like YouTuber and streamer events. And I'm not saying that just because I'm a YouTuber and streamer, but I'm saying that because like the introductions people have had to this game through those outside sources is what's causing the continued growth. It's new faces, new people trying the game for the first time. I know a lot of people tried the game for the first time based off of like the video that I did on it, because they had just never seen the game before. They'd heard people talk about it, but they had never seen somebody actually just sit down and play it. And once they saw it, they're like, actually, that's pretty cool. And so then they wanted to try it and they hop on. So yeah, reading the comments, it's interesting to see that there are lots of people who never heard of it. Yeah. Well, it's one of those things, like, it's been in the public consciousness for so long that I think it makes sense that a lot of people have just kind of tuned it out at this point, because it's like, oh yeah, that's the game that's never coming out. Okay, yeah, whatever. And they just don't think about it, right? Turn their brain off to it. But it is coming. I'm coming. It's coming. We'll just have to see. But that persistent universe tech is pretty wild. And like I said, there's just nothing like it in the industry right now. Nobody's done anything close to that, as far as I'm aware, which is pretty freaking cool. I'll praise companies when they do really cool stuff with tech. I still insist the NPC system from Watch Dogs Legion that Ubisoft built is very, very impressive. That system's crazy. However, it just didn't make for a really fun game, right? Like they had the cool thing, but they didn't know how to turn it into a fun game. And the persistent entity streaming is one of those things where it's cool, but to implement it into a game is another thing. It looks like already there's a lot of fun with just dynamic stuff that you can do randomly using that tech. Again, like I said, having an entire planet at your disposal and then finding one little cave somewhere that you can stash stuff is awesome. I think they could have better native support for like base building, or perhaps for like setting up beacons for quick travel to those locations to retrieve loot that you've hidden in caves. If they could eventually get to the point where it's like got terraforming so you can actually dig your own caves and stuff, that would be awesome. The other game that never comes out is GTA 6. Oh man, I would not be shocked if by the end of this year we know like that 2024 is the year, because they have taken tons of people off of development on GTA Online They're pulling a ton of people out of it, specifically to work on GTA 6. So they're working on it. He took my thing. Red flag.